Alright guys, we're going on a cooking adventure today. This is one of my favorite cakes. I make it for diabetics, I feed it to diabetics, I've given it to people with pancreatic failure, and it does not raise their blood sugar at all. Some people eat it for their packed lunches, and it feels like a steak going down. It's heavy, it sticks with you. It's so incredibly easy to make. Alright, so I'll just start and I'll walk you through it. And just let me know if you enjoyed this 18 minutes of pure bliss and listening to me ramble. Alright, so we just start with 10 regular eggs. I tend to separate them in two bowls because these are hand-me-down bowls, and I have a $10 Black & Decker hand mixer. So if you have like the really nice fancy KitchenAid with the whipping attachment with the big bowl, you can totally do this, but it drowns them. Okay, I'm glad this happened. So you see, you cannot get even one drop of egg yolk in this bowl, right? So dump it, wash it out, dry it, and then we're going to really separate these egg whites from the egg yolks. So you need 3 bowls. Try to do about half in each one. There's totally a better way to do this, to separate yolks from whites, but if you're just cooking this at home for yourself or for your excited roommate, you will see popping in now and then in the video my kitchen assistant whose birthday it was. So this is why we made this cake. Not even one drop of yolk. Seriously. If you do that, they will not rise and your entire cake will be gross. Right? So those are on their own over there. And just a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar in each one. Any brand of allulose, just a tablespoon in each bowl. The allulose really makes them the allulose and the cream of tartar together just make them really fluffy and beautiful. We're gonna let 8 ounces of cream cheese just sit in the yolk bowl and soften up, and you just want to beat these things until you can turn the bowl upside down and they don't fall out. Like I cannot stress enough how beaten you want these things. Like, yeah, because it's the base of the cake, right? So there's no flour, there's no real filler. We're puffing protein with air and waiting for the magic. So yeah, you can combine them now, cause since we've beaten them separately. Yeah, but my the blender heads, they just kind of drown if there's more than 5 or 6 eggs in one bowl, and they just don't get as puffy. It puffs the top, but then not the bottom. So I just separate them. Yeah, and you don't even have to clean the tips. You're just gonna after you go from the whites to the yolks, just shove them in there and get mixing. You totally do not have to put a 1/4 of a stick of butter to grease the pan with. I did because it was kind of funnier, but then I quickly realized there was way too much butter, and yep, not a stick of butter. Just put that back in the fridge, save it for later. We are not counting macros here. And you don't have to. It's part of the simplicity of what I prescribe. Yeah, so until now, the whites have been completely separated from the yolk and cream cheese mixture. And you want to fold this in as gently as possible. This is the entire cake base, so you want it to puff. You know, there is no gluten, there's no other real rising agent. You want to just fold it like a sleeping baby you're tucking into bed. That's the best I could come up with. really, really gentle and soft. And I know it looks disgusting. It looks like some kind of old yellow cottage cheese or something, which is delicious. I'm sure I would enjoy yellow cottage cheese. But yeah, you want to try to incorporate it as well as you can. Otherwise, you'll end up with a rubbery sort of omelette on the bottom and puffy, nice cake texture on the top. And it just won't bake well. The texture ends up really weird. And then, while we were doing this, we have preheated the oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. But I'm in a different country. So I'm cooking with a gas oven, which I've never done before. And it's also in centigrade. So it's about 150 degrees Celsius. Or 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And you just kind of try to smooth this as well as you can. You don't want any burnt, crispy peaks on the top, because anything that sticks out will bake faster than the rest. And I know it looks ugly, but just wait. Just hold on. Hang in there. And I'm used to just electric convection ovens, so I had to kind of toy with it a little bit. Just start with about 25 minutes. And you'll see when it doesn't jiggle, it kind of browns really nicely. It almost looks like cornbread, I guess. And that's when you know it's done. So then I just went ahead and put this in the refrigerator overnight, or you can put it in the freezer for an hour. Once the cake is cooled, we've got 3.5 ounces of, I like the 90% cocoa Lindt bar, but you can use 3.5 ounces of sugar-free chocolate. But it has so little sugar in it, and it's spread over the entire cake. It honestly does not. I've never had it affect anyone. My blood sugar doesn't move at all. I've given this to people with a failed pancreas, very, very diabetic people, and it's fine. So you just want to chop it up real nice. You put it in a little sauce bowl, carefully, because gravity wins every time. It's one of my corniest sayings. I say it all the time. Drop something and it falls to the floor. Gravity wins every time. So then the whole frosting recipe takes a stick of butter, just a typical 4-ounce stick, but you just put half in the chocolate bowl to keep the chocolate from burning, and then the other half goes into the mixing bowl. You just want to put it on as low as possible and just really slowly and patiently just mix it until it's completely smooth. We're going to put this in a piping bag, and you don't want any clumps. But also, this part is somewhat unnecessary. My mother was a wedding cake maker, and I just enjoy decorating cakes and making them layered, which you don't have to do. You can leave this cake complete. Let me pause this for a second. You can leave this cake completely in just the flat sheet pan and just dump the frosting on top. You don't have to cut it or layer it or anything. You can just make it as simple as possible, make it a single layer cake, and just slice it the way you like. But I'm just showing you there's an alternative you can make. I mean, this is something you could bring with super low carb. It won't give you a sugar spike. It won't make your children bounce off the walls. It's quite heavy, so you can't overeat it. Yeah, okay. So we've gone with the rest of the half stick of butter. There's, what is this one? 4 ounces of softened cream cheese, so a half a pack. Is 2/3 a cup of heavy whipping cream. and just kind of cream those together before we add in the powders. It can get really crazy. And try to get it as smooth as you can. Again, it kind of looks like weird cottage cheese or something. And then a teaspoon of extract, usually vanilla, but I only had maple extract. We've got 3 tablespoons of Dutch process cocoa powder, 3 tablespoons of allulose, and you really want to just kind of turn it over a bit by hand really slowly and then turn it on, because you'll cause a dust explosion. It'll end up in your lungs, I swear. And then just kind of get that as smooth as you can. And now we're pouring in the dark chocolate sauce from the saucepan on top of the stove. Got my mouth watering just thinking about it. It's so good. You wouldn't believe it. It's not overly sweet. It doesn't make you feel sick after. It's so nice. And then you just get it really, really smooth. Very, very smooth. And then just to make it a little special, I put one, you can make it like a vanilla cream, but this one ended up being a maple cream because I didn't have any vanilla extract. So just half a teaspoon of extract, 1 tablespoon of allulose, and 2/3 a cup of heavy whipping cream. I often like having a different layer in the middle of the cake, but again, you don't have to layer it. You can literally just leave it on a sheet pan, make the chocolate frosting. You don't even have to do this vanilla one. So now the cake has cooled for a little bit. I decided to make a 3-layer cake because this was the only size of the pan I had. I just moved here, and never mind my my kitchen. I live in an old concrete building from the 1970s in a foreign country, and rent is $165 by the beach. Just saying. So you get what you pay for. I know, and it looks like an absolute mess, but you want to scrape off and try to even out the edges, because some of them stick to the pan. When it rises, then it falls. So you just want to kind of get it even. I've never made a square cake before, but it was an added challenge with the corners. They're a little harder to frost, and then it's harder to get the layers all the same size, but it's quite nice. And again, you just want to peel those high edges off. And if you peel too much, you just shove it back in. No one will ever know. Yeah, just like that. Cake Band-Aid. And the bottom looks incredibly burnt, and I thought it would be disgusting, but you couldn't taste it at all. So again, it's a gas oven, so it doesn't have the burners like I'm used to with an electric oven, and it kind of like roasted the bottom of my cake, but it came out fine. And here we're just beating that vanilla cream layer. This stuff is magic. This is about 1/3 of a teaspoon of konjac powder or glucomannan powder. It sets the cream. It sets the heavy cream, and I often use that exact cream mixture as icing for other cakes. And if you've ever made just a whipped cream mixture, and they recommend putting gelatin or other things to try to set the cream, they're all horrible. The only one I've ever found that actually works is konjac jelly. And then you just like the other layers, if you want to layer it. Again, this is extra work, but I grew up watching my mother do this my whole life, and I'm not very good myself, but um, I like pretending I know how to decorate cakes. and again, if you do, you could totally take this to a party, and if you're on this protocol and watching your sugar, but you still want to participate, you can bring this and not feel guilty about it. Typically until you kind of hit your weight goal. This is like maximum once a month treat. But I was working with a guy. He was a flight attendant and had to pack all of his food, and he was bringing this about 2 or 3 times a week for lunch, sometimes more. And in the first 6 weeks, he still lost 46 pounds. Isn't you basically can't overeat it. It's so dense, but not in a sickening kind of way. And yeah, so we're just working our way around, trying to fill in all the holes and gaps. And then I took my knife, just the back edge of a knife, and tried to flatten it out as well as I can. I know it's still really ugly, but we're gonna pipe the rest of it onto the top of the cake and just pretend that it's okay. It tastes better than it looks. I tend to wear gloves. The butter, it's about 85 degrees in my apartment, and the butter tends to get soft toward the end, and it just kind of blobs out. So if you wear gloves, you can protect the butter and keep it cool for as long as possible. And you can just do any design you want. I have one piping bag and one tip, so all of my cakes look the same. And honestly, this cake is all about just working with what you have. All of my mixing bowls are hand-me-downs from my roommate's mother. What else? We cooked it in a glass casserole pan. This is not a cake box, it's a little Tupperware box, and I decided to cut the cake to the shape of the only container I had to store the cake in. We bought a $10 hand mixer. These are my winter gloves from when I was working somewhere cold. I mean, like, just go with what you have, you know? It doesn't have to be expensive or special or anything. And then you can just think of creative ways to use up the frosting. So we put a little embellishment at the bottom to try to make it look amazing, of course. And gosh, it tastes like exactly like what went into it. The icing is so buttery and smooth, and it's not too sweet. It just kind of melts in your mouth, really. Just make it up as you go until the bag is empty. And so you can see how it's gotten just a little softer toward the end. So they're kind of little round blobs. Even with gloves, it melts. Tastes the same though. Yeah. And that's how it turned out. You can see the vanilla cream layer